Hi, everybody. I'm having this week's edition of Straight Talk with Bren O'Brien and Tim Rowe from the Straight. We're in Melbourne this week for the Melbourne Premier Yearling sale coming up this week for Inglis. But the feature chat today will be with bloodstock agent Jim Clarke. Hopefully we're going to talk to Jim about the remarkable run of success he and trainer Bjorn Baker are having at the moment, as well as Jim talking about the Premier sale and where the yearling market is at the moment. So interesting chat with Jim there. We'll also start stallion deal, from those done, as well as those which may be done in the near future, as well as the challenges in the bloodstock market in Tasmania at the moment. In wagering, the battle for PointsBet heats up as Nixie and Bluebet make their bids, while in racing we reflect on the contribution of Mike Moroney and look at some possible real estate acquisitions in New South Wales. Tim, we're both in Melbourne, as I said, ahead of the Melbourne Premier sale. Starts on Sunday. First up, talk to us about what you expect of the market, mate. I mean, how do you think this is going to play out over the next few days?
Well, this is a bit different doing this, isn't it? Been very close. Look, Melbourne, it'll be more of the, we keep saying, but it'll be more of the same. You're in Tassie on Monday, and that was difficult, not unexpected, but difficult. And the same will be at Premier. There's always some very, very good horses come out of Premier. The Hong Kong trade horses. And interestingly, some people told me at English Classic that was very tough buying for the traders because everything that vetted well, nice type, suited that. The trainers and syndicators, sort of those, were on the same horses. So, probably the traders haven't got as many horses as they would have liked, and Premier traditionally is a very good sale for that. So I think if you've got the right horses, you'll get very, very well paid, possibly better than you have in past years. It's just, again, if you're off the pace, you're well off the pace. And, book 2 might show that. But again, it's a horse sale. Anything can happen. And it takes 2 bidders.
Yeah, indeed, and get things excited. It's interesting to note that sort of Victorian investment across the board this yearling sales season, Tim, has been down a little bit. It was down at Magic Millions. It was down at Karaka. It was actually up a little bit at Classic. But it's just been interesting to see the temperature where the Victorian market's at the moment. Obviously, we've got I don't want to say overbearing, but certainly the outsized influence of Yearling on the market, given they're offering around about 80 horses over the 3 days in Melbourne. So that's a bit of a factor as well. There's a few things going on there, and we'll have a good look at the next week, but it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. Yeah,
Yearling obviously skew those buyer stats as well. So, it's probably a little bit unfair on the Victorians. As I said, Mick Price has been very active at all the sales. Tony McAvoy was active in Perth. I think bought 3 or 4 and bought 3 or 4 in Tassie, as well as, really made Classic his own as well. So the Victorians are still buying. It's just probably not to the same level, and arguably they don't need to because there's not as much competition for those horses.
All right, we'll delve into the chat now with Jim Clarke, Tim, but not before reflecting on the remarkable run of results that Bjorn Baker's had of late. If you go back to the last 3 months, Bjorn had 26 winners from 26 from 69 runners in December, 21 from 71 in January, and now 20 from 65 in February, like pretty much going at 30%, which is remarkable, given a lot of those winners are coming, in city tracks as well. He's won over $16 million in prize money already this year. That's more than he ever has in the entire season. So it's been quite a remarkable run. And it's been very noticeable. And I think punters around Australia are certainly getting behind the Bjorn Baker train at the moment, aren't they?
You wouldn't mind being Bjorn's bowler. I'm not saying he's got one, but if there's a job available.
Well, there was a horse that was 26 into $4 the other day that won. So someone's backing him, I can tell you that. So
exactly. No, he's training the house down. He's a hard worker. Yes, he's a jovial guy. Bjorn, good fun to be around, but he obviously can train a horse and be at the stables day in, day out doing the work.
Yeah. And as Bjorn's bloodstock man, Jim Clarke's had a rare insight into what's gone on there. I began by talking to Jim about about Bjorn's remarkable streak, and later on we sort of go into the current take of the yearling market. I'm joined by Jim Clarke, and Jim's a reflection of the last few months. Obviously, you've worked heavily with Bjorn over the years. You two have been very close as, you as his bloodstock advisor and working for him back in the day. I mean, it's been a quite extraordinary run that he's been on. What have you seen from your perspective about what's gone on? What's changed? What's this, this step up that is stable that was probably coming, an 18% win rate for the last 3 months has gone at 30%?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of that's down to what's happening in Bjorn's stable and the systems that he's got in place and the people that he's got around him. I guess one of the big things I think Bjorn's always been very focused on is making sure he's across what happens with his team of horses. And what I mean by that is as his business has grown and he started to have more and more success, it's probably been enticing to spread out and have satellite stables and things like that in different regions. But he's always said to me, and he's always been adamant, that he wants to make Sydney his home, Sydney his base. And I think one of the key advantages of doing that is that all the horses that he trains are under his care, custody, and control. He's there pretty much every morning. They're under his watchful eye. And that of the sort of core team that he has around him, he keeps a pretty small team relative to a lot of the other larger sort of or medium to larger size stables. But I think having them all located at Warwick Farm is something that's, I think, held him in very good stead and in a lot of ways has contributed to the amazing run of success he's having at the moment. Not only that, he's made pretty significant investments himself into new infrastructure, a new barn and those type of things. And I think as the results have come over the last 3 or 4 years, it's allowed him to invest in a high quality of bloodstock, which is fortunately where I've come into it.
Yeah, I mean, was there a moment where you think, you got together and said, right, we've always done well and always found value and bought good horses with it. We've actually got to get stuck in here, or has it just evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, I think it's more just a sort of process of gradual, continual improvement. I think I was very lucky. Bjorn gave me an opportunity to set up on my own. That was the only reason I was ever to be able to become a bloodstock agent. He tapped me on the shoulder and said, I'm looking for someone to give me some help with this and create a bit of a more formal structure in how we approach the sales. And luckily, through my previous relationship and working for him, I was the man that he asked to do it. And I think that, a number of things contributed to that. We're good mates. We'd worked together for, a period of time. And I also had a existing relationship with some of his more key clients. So, but when I started, I guess we were operating differently because we had different budgets. All the horses that we buy, when I say all of them, I'd sort of estimate that 95% of those horses we're buying on spec and we're sort of syndicating or selling them down to Bjorn's client base. And when I came along in sort of 2018, 2019, Bjorn was going well, but he certainly didn't have the same volume of success that he's got now, and it meant that we didn't have as much of a budget to work with. So as the success has come, we've been given a little bit more leash to buy a nicer, I guess, more expensive horse at an average price across the sales. It doesn't mean we're playing in the top echelon or even the high echelon of the yearling market, but it allows us to sort of buy at the sale average, for most of the sales we go to, and it's given us a better chance to buy better horses.
Yeah. And you look at his stats this year, it has been his 3-year-olds, that have really, he's had a lot of 3-year-old winners, but he's also had some 2-year-old winners as well. So they're emerging horses that have come through. So, that must be pleasing from that perspective. Obviously getting them to win time after time again is probably part of the training, I suppose, to get them to come back. But to know you've been able to identify, strong, reliable, tough horses, but also that are brilliant enough to win and keep on winning, yeah?
Yeah, I guess, my direct involvement in Bjorn's business now is helping source the horses. I'm not as involved in the management of the training of them as I used to be, but I do know with certainty that when we go to the yearling sales, for the most part, we are trying to buy the horse that is a good chance of being up and running, not necessarily as a pre-Christmas 2-year-old, but as a 2-year-old. But we want to try and have longevity out of them. So we want to try buy horses that can continue to improve and develop into their 3-year-old year and possibly beyond. I know, I've got, a very good team that helps me at the yearling sales. Alan Frogley is a huge part of what I do. George Griffin is equally a huge part of what we do. And one of the things that I know Bjorn's training style is when they're in the stable, they're working and they're working hard, but the minute there's any sign of a problem, they pull up and they're given time. And I think, that's, we're sort of enjoying the fruits of that at the moment with a horse like Point and Shoot, who, possibly is bred to be up and going as a sort of early 2-year-old, being by Blue Point out of a C Point mare. But the reality was he wasn't ready. And when he was put under pressure, he needed time and he was afforded that time. And Alan's very involved in that aspect of it. All the horses are trotted up every Thursday. The minute there's any sign of shin soreness or other problems, they're given the time that they need. And, you look at a horse like I Know a Star, who came out of this Melbourne Premier sale, he wasn't necessarily bred to be the early 2-year-old, but he's a phenomenally tough, sound racehorse that just keeps showing up season after season. So I think that's been a huge part of it. He knows when to push, he knows when to pull. He's got very good systems in place. I know Luke Hilton's a huge asset. It's a big help to him. He's very sharp on the form. I think they place them very well. So look, it's a huge combination of different things. And thankfully at the moment it's all come together and he's had a phenomenal run.
It must give you a bit of fair bit of confidence. You can pick out a good horse, which is kind of nice to know, but also to know the fact that when you have that success, that there's a good chance that there's going to be more involvement. There's going to be more money to spend, or better horses, or more horses, or whatever. Like, from your perspective, in your career perspective, it must feel like it's a good time to go. All right, this is now, we've kind of gone to a next level, but there's another opportunity for, isn't there?
Yeah, like it's very much a self-fulfilling thing. I knew when I started I had to do more than show up to the sales, look at all the horses, put a short list together and put my hand in the air. I was very conscious that to be able to provide the service that Bjorn needed, I had to help with some of the selling, some of the infrastructure around how we place the horses that we bought. And so, it was a collaborative thing where we really made the conscientious decision to change the way that we marketed Bjorn's business and change the way that we approached selling of the horses. And there were several different things involved in that. Andrea, Bjorn's wife, is the brainchild behind the marketing. She's the best at it without a doubt, in my opinion. I think a lot of people would agree they're an industry leader on that front. Bjorn's a very authentic guy. It's a very authentic brand. They lean into that in a big way, and I think it sort of he endears himself to a lot of people through being the person that he is. I think Andrea does a phenomenal job of bringing that to life in the way that she runs the social media side of things. And taking that a step further, we sort of re-energized the way that we marketed the horses that we bought through email marketing and that type of thing. And I'm very involved in that. Ben, who works with me, is a great young guy. He's very involved in that as well. And bringing Georgia Griffin into the business a year or two ago has had a huge impact on the way that, I guess, Bjorn Baker Racing integrates with its clients, the way that we sort of proactively sell those horses and things as well. Fortunately, it's tied in with having some of those 3-year-olds, as you say, show up and turn out to be, good horses, and having OLA do that. It was the first yearling sale that Georgia was formerly part of the team, and it was a horse that was very high on her agenda, and fortunately Bjorn gives myself, and I get to lead that team myself, Alan, Georgia, a lot of rein to be able to identify the horses that we think are going to suit the stable. And basically Bjorn says, if you think they're worth the money that we need to bid on them, and Georgia's confident that she can sell them, then he lets us get on with it. Yeah, so far it's been a good partnership.
How have you viewed the yearling sales this year, Jim? It's been a little bit of a sticky market. I think sellers are probably finding it a bit harder, but the buyers, always come back and say, you try to buy good horses, hard work, because a lot of people on the same horse. I mean, is that your sort of experience on it? The fact you have to be really strong on the ones you like, but it is a bit more of a different market than what's probably we've seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah, like on the buying side of things, I don't think I've walked away from the sales this year thinking I've got extreme bargains or anything like that. I think you're right. I think it's probably become a little bit more polarizing. If you have got the product that doesn't tick pretty much every box, then it's going to be a little bit stickier possibly to sell. That being said, I think given people's expectations going into the year, I think that the results have held up fairly well. Like the clearance rates probably haven't been as strong through the ring, but have managed to get there outside of the ring. The averages and medians have held up respectfully well, given the way that people probably perceive the market going into the year. Yeah, look, it's on the selling side. I know, in the work that I do for Ridgemont, if you get to the sale with the right product, you're going to get well paid, and there's no doubt about that. Similarly, if you've got the wrong horse in the wrong sale, and it can be a little bit friendless. I think it's probably a bit of a correction. I don't think it's anything drastic. I think it's going to swing back the other way, relatively quickly. We've got a very vibrant industry. The prize money's still fantastic. People are engaged with the sport, and fortunately, because Bjorn's had a phenomenal run of success leading into the yearling sales, we found it probably as easy as we ever have in terms of getting shares and horses sort of sold down. But yeah, I know not everyone's in the same boat, but overall, I think it's been a pretty healthy market.
And particularly at the play on this week in Melbourne. Obviously, the sale starts on Sunday. We're now Thursday, so there's a couple of days of inspections still to go and get through it. But I mean, yeah, you're expecting it's probably going to be the similar sort of market where the good ones are hard to get and the other ones are probably harder to sell.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way it will be. I think the good thing about all of the sales we have here, they've all got their own little niches. Melbourne's unique in the sense that it's predominantly Melbourne-based vendors. A lot of the horses are Vobis. There's probably a lot of Victorian trainers that probably don't spend as much money at other sales waiting for Vobis horses to come up, and there's a very good reason for that. I'll go from here to the QTIS sale in Queensland next week, and I know there'll be Queensland traders that have held off waiting for, predominantly QTIS horses at a more affordable level. So I think the way that the structure of it at the moment lends itself to, I don't think there's going to be one sale that suffers, significantly more than others. I know Tassie was probably down a little bit the other day, but I thought Perth held up very well. I think Premier is going to be a good sale. There's plenty of nice horses. I think it's definitely on par in terms of quality as it has been the past 3 or 4 years, and that should probably, I expect, be reflected in the results.
Tim, it's probably fair to say it's been a patchy sales season today. Like, there has been some positive things and come out of it. But I was obviously at Launceston on Monday, and I've written a story about it, which is pretty clear. And look, it's not easy to say it wasn't a great. It's easy to say it wasn't a great yearling sale, given that 3 years ago that sale was grossing $4.2 million, and now it's grossing less than $2 million. But I think there's a few local things at play there, but it does really highlight that struggle at the lower end. We diplomatically say the middle to lower end, but if horses are selling for $80,000 or less, they're probably at the lower end of the yearling market, which is the top price in Tassie. I don't think this is just a Tassie thing, Tim. I think probably we're seeing that a lot of the smaller vendors across the board are really sort of doing it hard, aren't they?
Yeah, we just, at other sales, I guess it's sort of shielded. We don't take as much notice of it because there's the $200,000, $500,000 horses. It's sort of, you sort of get blinded by those horses, where the $80,000 horses, there's plenty of those sold at all the sales and will be at Premier. It just happens to be the top price at in Tassie, and there'll be some good horses to emerge from there. It's just really difficult for those local breeders to, they need to reinvest, but where's the money come from? And a new stallion, as you wrote, and Dave Wishaw and Grenville, probably they are the two leading starts to get behind there. Whether they all work together, which they do to a degree, but whether they all have to pull their capital to buy one stallion and hope the stallion works, I'm not sure. And clearly they need government support too. And as you said in your article, there's a bit of uncertainty there, the long-term funding deed. So there's some concerns there. There's some smart people and young people, energetic people, Dave and Wishaw, Bart, McCulloch, but hopefully the future of the industry, but it's some challenging times for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there's a sense there that, those guys are farmers by nature. And, the reality is if the thoroughbreed industry keeps going the way it is down at the breeding industry, if it keeps on going the slide that's had in the last 3 years, well, there's a good chance those farms will use for other things, not thoroughbred production. And that's a shame. You mentioned stallions before. It's been a big week for stallions, Tim. Tell us about Henry Longfellow, this horse that Rosemont have secured, a shuttle stallion, a son of Debawi. Good get for Rosemont, it seems. Like they haven't really doubled that much into the shuttle sire market. Star Spangled Banner, obviously the one, but it seems like a good get for them. And after, you can talk about it now, but the too darn hot impact across Australia being a son of Debawi like this one is, there's something about that, isn't there? That's going to be high in the market, isn't it? So
for sure, too darn hot's, done remarkable things down here. He's beautifully bred out of a great mare, as Henry Longfellow is, and as Anthony Mitton suggested to me, that arguably Henry Longfellow is as well bred as Too Darn Hot, if not better. Flip of the coin, really. But that doesn't mean everything. But he's got the pedigree behind him. He won a Group 1 at 2. He's going to get the right chances, and by and large, probably Debawi's outshone the overall sire population for results down here. Night of Thunder only came down for 1 year, I think, and side 6 stakes winners, so that's a good effort. There's Ben Battle, it's got good support at Woodside last year. He ran second to Winks in a Cox Plate. That sire line seems to be working, so no reason why Henry Longfellow won't be can make his mark on the Australian stud book.
Yeah, and Debawi himself made a great, he's had 3 seasons and, produced a lot of quality of horses as well. I want to talk to you about another stallion. We profiled this guy a couple of weeks ago, Sandbar, right? Obviously one close to your heart, just up the road there in Coringal, not far away from Wagga, but a little bit of a buzz about him at the moment because he's had, obviously, Shaggy come out and running again this weekend with a view towards the slip up on the Pierro Plate. And we've also had a couple of other decent horses come out as well. It's a great story. The story that you went and had a chat with Scott McAlpine about when Spirit of Boom took off about 7 or 8 years ago. And in his first season, there was winners everywhere, stakes winners everywhere. And the conversation that Scott, who was the stud master, or what is a family stud at Yearling Stud, the conversations he had with some of the big studs, it was a really interesting insight, isn't it?
It was. It's great to speak to Scott because I've heard this story from other people and, it's like Chinese whispers, gets embellished or you're just not quite sure what's true, but there was, $50 million offers, this and that. But Scott actually said, no, when Jonker won the Wyong Magic Millions in December, it was a key lead-up race, as we all know, for the Magic Millions, he said to his wife, Bren, the phone's going to run hot here. Give it 10 minutes. And Colum Santry, and I can picture this. Those that know Colum can picture this. He rang up Scott and said, we need this stallion.
Yeah.
What do you mean we need this? He's going to make it. And as Scott said, well, that's great. I'm going to keep him there. It was just a cracking story. And Newgate, Arrowfield all made pitches and they decided, what, we're going to keep him. Harry McAlpine was working at Inglis at the time and a very talented auctioneer, could have, really made his way in that segment of the industry. He decided to go home and, they really, Spirit of Boom, Eureka was a great stud anyway, long-standing stud, but Spirit of Boom's taken to the next level, put them, Spirit of Boom's had a sensational season with his 2-year-olds. We've got runners again. I think he's got a couple of runners this weekend in stakes races, and Scott said, we could have taken the money, but what do you do with it? You're invested in horses or different things. It's not just about the money, it's the ride of a lifetime that Spirit of Boom's taken them.
Yeah, quite a remarkable horse that, I think he was a Group 1 winner at 7, wasn't he? So he wasn't like he won early. He was a prodigiously, talented at 2-year-old, but he managed to produce all these horses. And I think it's a great story. Probably gives faith that, when we talk about those issues before in Tasmania and stuff, gives us a bit of faith that, they get good results. And I mean, the stories that the Mitchells would tell about I'm Invincible. I mean, they waited a very long time for I'm Invincible to come along. It's not like he was an overnight sensation. Something that, they had to work on that one to get that deal done and what they were able to do. But I just thought it was like, Scott's always a great bloke to talk to, so passionate about his breeding. And when we talk about industries which are run by a long time by families, and the McAlpine family being one of them, I just think it's a terrific story. And check it out if you will on the site. It's a great insight into the nuances of the stallion game. All right, on to wagering now. And interesting, very interesting week. We had a statement yesterday coming out from PointsBet saying that Mixi, who run BetM in Australia, they're a Japanese-backed organisation. They're a massive organisation. A couple of years ago, I was doing some research into Mixi and I just got down a rabbit hole of all the things they're involved in. They're a seriously large organisation. And that was when they first came into Australia with BetM. Now, not many people would probably know BetM. They're sort of a low-key, sort of local player. But the Japanese headquarters are very ambitious. Anyway, so they've come in for a bid to take over PointsBet. Look, the fact that PointsBet became a takeover target wasn't surprising. That's probably been on the cards for a little while. Maybe we thought it might take a little bit more, but this deal came out. Literally 10 minutes later in the inbox came another email saying Bluebet have put forward a similar offer, a slightly improved offer in terms of overall cash or whatever else for PointsBet. Very confusing for those just trying to work out what was going on. Tim, we had to make a few phone calls and like, who's buying who and what's going on here? Basically what happened is Bluebet were trying to do a deal with PointsBet. PointsBet said, well, we're already halfway down the aisle with Mixi. You better hurry up. And, to put it in parlances of the old movie The Graduate, or maybe a more modern take, maybe Wayne's World, Bluebet are banging on the glass going, what's going on here? And they're still banging on the glass. Bluebet are determined to get this deal done. PointsBet have said, no, we're not interested. Your deal's not as good as you think it is. And we think the better values in the Mixi deal, and they're going to progress down that. And that'll probably go towards, further approvals and stuff in a couple of months' time. So there's a little bit of leeway here, but Bluebet seem really determined to do this because this is their opportunity to get to 10% market share. If they do that, the economics change. It also would be a significant play because Bluebet/BetR, BetR is a corporate, consumer-facing brand at the moment. They're obviously, their chairman is Matt Tripp. And there's no bigger figure in Australia wagering than Matt Tripp. Obviously, he was a guy that built SportsBet. They came back and built CrownBet/BetEasy, sold that off to SportsBet again effectively. And then it's come back a third time with BetR. And just trying to build out this enormous offering. So really fascinating times. We're interested to see how this plays out in the next couple of months. I'll have an article up the next day or so, just sort of looking at that. But it's a interesting time in the wagering space. Obviously, Tabcorp talking about things on the weaker international tote. There's a few other bits and pieces going on. Meanwhile, PointsBet and BetUp are both in reasonable states, in terms of their balance books and how things are going. Things are progressing well there. They've got a lot of customers. I think one over 280,000, one over 170,000, 160,000. I'll double check those numbers. But, they're both doing reasonably well in terms of growing customers. We've obviously got, in Australia, we've got Tabcorp in a state of flux. We've got Entain now probably in a state of flux. We've got SportsBet, who are the big dog at the top and probably aren't going anywhere, but probably just, kicking around at the, sort of 45% market share. So it's interesting times in the wagering space. Watch this space in terms of it plays out. All right, we'll move on now to the racing game, Tim, and we'll have a look at that. Obviously sad news today, the passing of Mike Moroney, the Group 1 multiple Group 1 winning trainer. I think someone said he won 60 Group 1s. I don't check that detail, but he won a Melbourne Cup. I would say of all the trainers I've dealt with, making cold calls to people and talking to people and trying to get stories, Mike was always such a terrifically generous person. He was so passionate and knowledgeable. He had horses you like to follow.
Yep.
He had that sort of way about him that the way he prepared his horses, he's probably a bit old-fashioned in some ways. And obviously worked, close in concert with his brother in terms of the bloodstock agent, Paul. It was sad. Obviously, he had been unwell and then had recovered a little bit, but sadly passed away in his sleep overnight on Thursday morning. Tim, what horses, when you think about Moroney, what horses stick out in your mind as the great Mike Moroney horses?
Well, you can't. I agree with you. Dealing with Mike, not regularly, but he always took a holistic view of the industry. It's very easy to be selfish in this game and self-interest rules.
Yeah.
But he could take it, mightn't have been good for Mike Moroney, but he could see the bigger picture is good for the industry. And you always learnt something rather than saying the horse just, I was happy the way it worked or whatever. He'd give reasons why he was doing things and why horses improved. I remember, Perno was a great horse. I remember backing her. I think it was a mare. And
she won. Yep, she won. I think a Rupert Clarke and some other ones as well. And one of my favourite horses was excellent.
Yeah, well, breakable.
Came out of New Zealand and was just, oh my gosh, that he's still stuck out in the Tabaret Minibo that Kobe Thames Cox play. That was one of the craziest rides I've ever seen. But they came out the Melbourne Cup. And, I think we've got a pocket here, but for all the truth in the world, he's going to run second in the Melbourne Cup, and he's got run down late. But he's there's a lot of, obviously Brew was a champion. To win a Melbourne Cup is a great horse. He had a lot of champions in New Zealand as well. Yeah, he leaves an amazing legacy. He really does. Derby winners, all the good horses that he had across the years, and always never changed. Great raconteur, apparently great company at dinner parties. Unfortunately, I never had the pleasure of being in that space, but that doesn't surprise me because he just had honestly, he had the best voice in the world. You can listen to his voice all day, and it's lots of sympathy to his family. It'll obviously be a big loss. I think that the racing stables will continue. Glenn Thompson will continue to head them up. They've got runners on Saturday, including in the Group 1. So, and in the Guineas, Plymouth. He had a winner last week, Kerbalont, who seems to be going pretty well. So I think there's a bit more to come in the Mike Moroney legacy. Tim, the last thing I want to touch on is a bit of real estate news out of your part of the world. Possibly a bit of real estate news. You ran a story during the week about Ardlethan. Let me get that pronunciation. Ardlethan, thank you very much. And interesting one because picnic race course on a private land, not going to run this year because there's a bit of a kerfuffle between the local owner and the owner and the sort of, Racing New South Wales might do a plastic running rails and whatever else. But it looks like there's a chance that Racing New South Wales may end up putting a bid into this place. And that would be significant for the local community to have that in. What the question is, I guess, obviously when Racing New South Wales aren't scared of a bit of real estate at the moment, but where does that leave, what would that do for the local community, do you think, Tim? And I guess talk us a bit about the story and the background of this one.
I wanted to just moving back a bit, that you think Wayne's World's a modern movie. I'll give you that. But moving on to Ardlethan. Look, I've been there. I've had winners there. An English graduate, I'm sure they'll want that. But an English graduate, he won a couple of races. That was fantastic. It's a very unique setting because it is on a farm and it's a massive track. It's almost like dare I say, it's like a Flemington because it's so big. There's not really chutes because it's just all one massive track. But they didn't have, apart from like the the 300 metres in the straight, they didn't have an outside running rail. And then after the finishing line, they didn't really have rail either side. And sometimes the jockey's trying to pull them up without horses going onto the Newell Highway just because of the way. So, safety's vital, and Racing New South Wales are right in this case, going, you need a plastic running rail to be installed right round the outside of the track. For safety purposes, the rail was donated and everything, so they had all that. That's not an issue. But the owner of the farm, and I've spoken to him, and I can absolutely understand his take, and it's leased at the moment, but it is a working farm. You have a running rail, basically a 2,000 metre plus course, all enclosed, and you've got trying to herd sheep or cattle or whatever, and then all cropping, and it's all cropping's all modernised now with electronics, and all of a sudden it's not programmed that there's a running rail there. Bang, all. I can understand all the different dramas of where it's ended up. And Racing, you said, well, the club to the picnic, all volunteers 2 years ago went to Racing New South Wales. Can you help us out? And they sort of, at the time the races went ahead last year, and they sort of said, no, it doesn't make much sense. But this year, anyway, the race is going to be held at Narangba because it's just can't be held at Ardlethan, unfortunately. But Racing New South Wales are considering it. Whether they go ahead, that's another thing. Rough valuations for the parcel of land is 700 to $1 million. What do they do with it for the other 364 days a year? Do they lease it out? I saw some comments on the story about free training, and I'm sure it was in jest, but it's not built for that. There's a few, dare I say, call them daily stables. It's not built for that. It is a farm, and then the committee would run the races on the race day. It's just whether the Racing New South Wales can see value in that and, add to their property portfolio. I'm not taking a side whether that's good management or not, but, for the local community, it would be vital. It would be excellent because it is their one day of the year, tracks 1,600 people from hours away. It's probably 40 minutes from Griffith. It's an hour and a half from Wagga. It is not in the middle of nowhere, but it's for the Riverina, it's isolated, I guess you'd say. Yeah. For local picnics, it'd be fantastic. When I was at Dettering picnics in Victoria on Saturday, record crowd, so they say, probably well under what's recorded in the paper, but it was still a very strong crowd. So there's that attachment to country racing alive and well, I'd say, and hopefully Racing New South Wales or the farmers, they can come to some sort of agreement to ensure that the races continue on for another decade or two, or on for forever and a day.
Yeah. And before we get into people running a plane that we covered story covering Kringle started in Leeton, where we're probably not, there's a bit of a river or anything. But I would like to say that what this tells us is the importance speaks to us the importance of local clubs too. I mentioned in a story during the week that I went to Longford on the weekend and I looked at the race course there. I haven't had the pleasure of going there on that one day a year when they race there. But there's a race club that's been racing on that site since 1845.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary history, and that connection with the local community is something that racing needs to be a lot better at promoting, talk about the big events and all that sort of stuff. And don't get me wrong, they're super important, but that local engagement and that local community stuff is key as well. Thanks for joining us on Straight Talk. Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you're listening to us, whether it be on YouTube, Apple, Podbean, Spotify, wherever you listen to us. Make sure you're sure to subscribe as well. And if you really love what we do, don't be scared to put in a little pitch to be a sponsor of this wonderful podcast or anything else to do with the Straight. You can send us an email at editor@straight.com.au. We'll talk to you next week with a comprehensive review of the Melbourne Premier sale. Thanks for joining us.